You know that moment when you realize your entire marriage has been a lie? Not because your husband cheated, but because he let his mother destroy you for 15 years while he watched. I need to tell you about Jasmine. Because what happened to her, it could happen to anyone. And by the time you realize what's happening, the poison has already spread through every corner of your life. Jasmine was 23 years old when she married Thomas. Young, hopeful, so deeply in love she could barely see straight. Thomas was everything she thought she wanted, kind, successful, from a good family. His mother Margaret was wealthy, influential, the kind of woman who commanded respect when she walked into a room. On Jasmine's wedding day, while everyone smiled for pictures, Margaret leaned in close during their first dance as mother and son. Close enough that only Jasmine could hear. "My son could have done so much better," she whispered, her smile never faltering for the cameras. Jasmine told herself she misheard. It was a stressful day. Margaret was probably just emotional about losing her son. She pushed it down, buried it deep, and promised herself she would prove Margaret wrong. And oh, she tried. For 15 years, she tried. Before we go any further into this, I just want to say, if you feel a connection to these stories, a small click on that like button and subscribe would mean more to me than you know. It lets me know I'm not just speaking into the void, that you're really here with me. Alright, let's continue. Every Sunday dinner at Margaret's house became a performance. Jasmine would cook Margaret's favorite dishes, only to hear it's fine, but not quite how Thomas's grandmother used to make it. She bought thoughtful gifts for every birthday and holiday, only to see them donated to charity the next week. She dressed conservatively, spoke softly, never argued, tried to mold herself into whatever Margaret wanted her to be. It was never enough. Margaret had a gift, a terrible, toxic gift. She could insult you while smiling. She could cut you down while everyone else thought she was being helpful. "Jasmine, dear, have you thought about losing a bit of weight? I worry about your health." This, said loud enough for the whole family to hear at Thanksgiving dinner. Thomas's ex-girlfriend Sarah used to run marathons, such a healthy girl. Sarah. That name became a weapon. Sarah was smarter, prettier, came from a better family, had better career prospects. Sarah, Sarah, Sarah. The ghost of the woman Thomas dated before Jasmine, held up as the gold standard Jasmine would never reach. But Jasmine kept trying. Because she loved Thomas. Because she believed that eventually Margaret would see her worth. Then the children came. First Emma, with her father's dark eyes and her mother's gentle spirit. Then 3 years later, little Michael, all energy and laughter. Jasmine thought, she truly believed, that becoming a grandmother would soften Margaret's heart. She was so wrong. Margaret didn't soften. She shifted tactics. Suddenly, the criticism wasn't just about Jasmine anymore. It was about her parenting. "You're holding the baby wrong. You shouldn't feed them that. They need more discipline. They're too soft because of you." Every decision Jasmine made was questioned, undermined, corrected. And Margaret started creating secrets with the children. Special treats that mommy doesn't need to know about. Private conversations that stopped when Jasmine entered the room. Whispered promises of when you're old enough, you can come live with grandma where things are better. Jasmine felt it, that slow erosion of her authority as a mother. But when she tried to talk to Thomas about it, he would sigh, tired from work, and say she's just being a grandmother, honey. You're too sensitive. Too sensitive. Those 2 words became his favorite shield for his mother's cruelty. The years blurred together. Jasmine found herself walking on eggshells in her own marriage, in her own family. She started second-guessing every decision, every word, every outfit. Margaret's voice lived in her head now, a constant stream of criticism that played even when the woman wasn't in the room. At family gatherings, Jasmine noticed the looks. The whispers that stopped when she approached. The way Thomas's siblings were friendly but distant. The way his father would glance at her with something that looked almost like pity. But she couldn't put her finger on why. Everyone was polite. Everyone smiled. On the surface, everything looked fine. Until that Tuesday afternoon, 3 months ago. Jasmine came home early from grocery shopping. She'd forgotten her wallet, a silly mistake. She walked into the house quietly, planning to grab it from her purse and head back out. That's when she heard Margaret's voice, clear as crystal, coming from the living room. She was on the phone, and she sounded so different from her usual controlled tone. She sounded venomous. "I'm telling you, Patricia, the woman is not stable," Margaret said, her voice dripping with false concern. "I've been documenting everything. The mood swings, the paranoia, the way she isolates the children. Thomas is starting to see it too, finally. It's only a matter of time. Jasmine froze in the hallway, her heart pounding so loud she could barely hear the rest. We've already spoken to lawyers about grandparents' rights, Margaret continued. If it comes to it, we'll prove she's unfit. The children deserve better than this. They deserve stability. They deserve to be protected from her. The room spun. Jasmine gripped the wall to steady herself. Oh, the whole family knows, Margaret laughed, cold and sharp. I've made sure of it. Everyone sees what she is. We're just waiting for the right moment to act. Thomas knows it's for the best, even if he struggles with the guilt. Jasmine backed away slowly, grabbed her wallet, and left the house as quietly as she'd entered. She sat in her car in the grocery store parking lot for 2 hours, shaking. 15 years. 15 years of trying to earn this woman's love. And all along, Margaret had been building a case against her, poisoning the family against her, planning to take her children. With Thomas's knowledge. That night, when Thomas came home from work, Jasmine asked him directly, "Does your mother think I'm an unfit mother?" The way his face changed, the guilt that flashed across his eyes before he could hide it, that told her everything. "She's just worried," he said carefully. "You've been stressed lately. We both have noticed. She means well." "She means well," Jasmine repeated slowly. "Your mother is telling people I'm mentally unstable, and she means well." "You're overreacting," Thomas said, his voice taking on that familiar dismissive tone. "This is exactly what she's talking about. The paranoia. Maybe you should talk to someone." And there it was. The poison had spread so deep that her own husband was using Margaret's words against her. He'd been turned completely, slowly, over 15 years of his mother's manipulation. Jasmine went upstairs that night and cried silently in the bathroom, but when she looked at herself in the mirror, something had shifted. The woman looking back at her wasn't the naive 23-year-old bride anymore. She wasn't the people-pleasing daughter-in-law who swallowed every insult with a smile. She was a mother. And someone was trying to take her children. That's when Jasmine made a decision. She would stop trying to prove herself to Margaret. She would stop defending herself to Thomas. She would stop playing the game by their rules. She would start playing to win. And she would document everything. The thing about poison is, you never know how far it's spread until you start looking. And once Jasmine started looking, she couldn't believe what she found. The morning after that overheard phone call, Jasmine did something she'd never done before. She started paying attention. Really paying attention. Not to what people said to her face, but to what happened when they thought she wasn't watching. She noticed how at her daughter Emma's school play, Thomas's sister Rachel sat 3 rows away instead of joining them. How Rachel waved politely but made an excuse about saving seats for other people. Rachel, who used to be warm, who used to invite them over for weekend barbecues. She noticed how the invitations to family events had become more formal, less personal. Like she was being included out of obligation rather than welcome. She noticed how Margaret's friends at church would smile tightly at her, then immediately turn to whisper to each other. How conversations would pause when she approached, then restart with forced cheerfulness about nothing important. It was everywhere. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. That weekend, Jasmine did something that felt almost crazy. She created a fake social media account, just to see. Just to understand what people were saying when they thought she couldn't hear. And oh, what she found broke something inside her. There was a private community group for the family. Thomas's extended family, about 30 people. Jasmine had never been added to it. She'd assumed it was just for planning events, nothing important. But scrolling through months of posts, she saw the truth. Margaret had been working overtime. Prayers for Thomas and the kids today. Jasmine had another episode this morning. I worry for those precious babies. This post from 8 months ago, with 17 comments of support and concern. Found out Jasmine has been withdrawing money from the business account again. Thomas is handling it quietly, but I'm worried about what else she's hiding. This one from 6 months ago. The children seem so anxious lately. Emma told me she's scared of making mommy angry. This breaks my heart. 4 months ago. Post after post after post. A carefully constructed narrative of a woman spiraling out of control. A mother who was unstable, possibly dangerous, definitely unfit. And every post painted Thomas as the long-suffering husband trying his best to hold everything together while protecting his children from their own mother. None of it was true. Not a single word. But 30 people believed it. 30 people had been reading these updates for years, watching Margaret build a case against Jasmine one lie at a time. Jasmine sat in her car, hands shaking as she scrolled, tears streaming down her face. She wanted to scream. She wanted to defend herself. But who would believe her? Margaret had been so careful, so consistent, for so long. That night, when Thomas got home, Jasmine tried again. One more time. Thomas, I need you to be honest with me. What has your mother been telling people about me? He sighed, that same tired sigh she'd heard 1,000 times. Why do you always do this? Why do you always create drama about my mother? I'm not creating drama. I'm asking a question. You're obsessed with her, Thomas said, loosening his tie. She's tried so hard with you, and you push her away. You make everything difficult. What has she told you about me? Thomas looked at her then, really looked at her, and she saw it. The doubt. The suspicion. The poison had reached him so completely that he looked at his own wife like she was a stranger. She's concerned, he said finally. We both are. You've been different lately. Paranoid. Seeing things that aren't there. She thinks, we think, maybe you should talk to someone. Get some help. Get some help, Jasmine repeated numbly. You think I need therapy because I'm finally noticing that your mother has been destroying my reputation for 15 years. See? This is what we're talking about. You think everyone is against you. That's not normal, Jasmine. He went upstairs. The conversation was over. In his mind, she'd just proven his mother right. Jasmine stood in the kitchen, and something crystallized inside her. A cold, hard clarity. Thomas wasn't going to help her. He was part of this. Maybe not actively, maybe not consciously at first, but his refusal to see, his refusal to stand up for her, his willingness to believe his mother over his wife, that made him complicit. She was alone in this. And if she was going to protect herself and her children, she needed to be smart. The next day, Jasmine went to the bank. She asked for statements from their joint account and from the business account where she was listed as a co-owner. The accounts Thomas managed, that Margaret had access to as the company bookkeeper. What she found made her blood run cold. Withdrawals. Dozens of them over the past 2 years. Small amounts at first, a few hundred here and there. Then larger. 2,000. 5,000. Always in cash. Always with her name on the withdrawal slip. But Jasmine had never made those withdrawals. She'd never even been to that bank branch. Someone had forged her signature. Someone had been systematically taking money and making it look like she was stealing from the family business. Margaret was building a financial case against her, complete with paper trail. Jasmine requested copies of everything. The bank teller, a kind woman named Susan, looked at her with concern. Is everything all right, honey? It will be, Jasmine said, her voice steadier than she felt. I just need these records. That evening, Jasmine stopped at an electronics store. She bought 3 things. A small digital recorder that looked like a pen. A backup recorder that looked like a flash drive. And a locked fireproof box to store everything in. She'd spent 15 years trying to be the perfect daughter-in-law. The perfect wife. The perfect mother by Margaret's impossible standards. That version of Jasmine was gone. The new Jasmine was going to document everything. Every conversation. Every lie. Every manipulation. Every piece of evidence that would prove what Margaret had been doing. And she was going to do it quietly, carefully, while still playing the role everyone expected her to play. 2 days later, Sunday dinner at Margaret's house. The whole family gathered around the table. Thomas's parents, his 2 siblings and their spouses, all the grandchildren. Margaret held court at the head of the table, gracious and warm with everyone. Everyone except Jasmine. Jasmine, dear, you look tired, Margaret said, her voice dripping with false concern. Are you sleeping well? Thomas mentioned you've been having some difficulties. Every eye at the table turned to Jasmine. She felt the weight of their judgment, their pity, their suspicion. The old Jasmine would have stammered, made excuses, tried to laugh it off. The new Jasmine smiled and reached for her water glass, the recorder in her pocket already running. I'm sleeping just fine, Margaret. Thank you for asking. It's just that the children mentioned you've seemed stressed lately, Margaret continued, her tone so reasonable, so caring for anyone listening. We want to help. Family helps each other. The children are fine, Jasmine said evenly. We're all fine. Of course, dear, Margaret said, exchanging a meaningful look with Thomas. That looks at everything. See how defensive she gets. See how she can't accept help. See how unstable she is. But this time, Jasmine was recording it. The tone. The looks. The performance. Over the next 3 weeks, Jasmine recorded everything. Margaret's phone calls to the house where she would subtly undermine Jasmine's parenting decisions. The family gatherings where snide comments were delivered with a smile. The whispered conversations with Thomas where Margaret would express her concerns about Jasmine's mental state. She documented the forged bank withdrawals with dates and amounts. She photographed the fake signatures next to her real ones. She reached out quietly to Thomas's ex-girlfriend, Sarah. The one Margaret had held up as the gold standard for 15 years. They met at a coffee shop across town. Sarah looked at Jasmine with understanding that came from experience. "She did it to me too," Sarah said quietly. "Back when Thomas and I were together. I was never good enough. Never right. She made me feel crazy." "Why did you break up with him?" Jasmine asked. "Because he wouldn't stand up to her," Sarah said simply. "I gave him an ultimatum. Me or her. He chose her. He'll always choose her." Sarah agreed to write a statement about her experience with Margaret. A pattern of behavior. Documentation that this wasn't new, wasn't isolated, wasn't in Jasmine's head. Then Jasmine did something that felt like a betrayal even as she knew it was necessary. She installed monitoring software on the family computer. The one Thomas and Margaret both used for business. And that's when she found the emails. Margaret and Thomas, going back 2 years. Discussing Jasmine. Discussing concerns. Discussing options. "We need to document everything," Margaret had written. "When the time comes, we need to show a clear pattern. Family court favors mothers, so we need an airtight case." Thomas had responded, "I don't want to take the kids from her. She's their mother. She's unstable," Margaret wrote back. "You see it. Everyone sees it. Those children deserve better. When you're ready to accept that, we'll be ready to act. I've already spoken to Gerald about the legal steps. He says with enough documentation, we have a strong case for custody modification." Gerald. Margaret's lawyer friend. This wasn't just talk. This was a plan. A timeline. A conspiracy. Jasmine printed everything. Every email. Every bank statement. Every text message she'd saved where Margaret had been cruel and Thomas had defended her. She bought a second phone, one Thomas didn't know about. She backed up everything to a secure cloud account he couldn't access. And then she waited. Watched. Recorded. While playing the role of the oblivious wife. 1 month after she'd overheard that phone call, Jasmine had enough. Enough evidence. Enough documentation. Enough proof that she wasn't crazy, wasn't paranoid, wasn't imagining things. Margaret had spent 15 years poisoning her marriage and her reputation. Now Jasmine had the antidote. But the final straw, the thing that pushed her from planning to action, that came on a Tuesday night when she came home from picking up Emma from dance class. She heard voices upstairs. Margaret's voice and the children's voices. Margaret wasn't supposed to be at the house. Thomas was working late. Margaret had let herself in with her key. Jasmine walked quietly up the stairs and stood outside Emma's bedroom door. "Your mommy loves you," Margaret was saying, her voice so sweet, so gentle. "But sometimes mommies get sick in their heads. It makes them say and do things that aren't right. Do you understand? Is mommy sick?" That was Emma's voice, small and scared. "We think she might be, sweetheart. That's why Grandma and Daddy are trying to help her. But if the sickness gets too bad, you might need to come stay with Grandma for a while. Would you like that?" "I want to stay with Mommy," Emma said. "Of course you do, darling. But sometimes what we want and what's best for us are different things. Grandma and Daddy will always do what's best for you. Even if it's hard. Even if it means being away from Mommy for a little while." Jasmine's hand gripped the doorframe so hard her knuckles turned white. Margaret was planting seeds. Preparing the children. Making them doubt their own mother. This was parental alienation. And Jasmine was recording every word of it. She walked into the room, her face calm even as her heart raged. "Margaret. I didn't realize you were here." Margaret's smile didn't falter. "Thomas gave me a key, dear. I was just spending some time with my grandchildren. Is that a problem?" "Not at all," Jasmine said smoothly. "But it's almost bedtime. I can take it from here." After Margaret left, after the children were asleep, Jasmine sat on her bed and listened to the recording 3 times. Margaret's sweet voice poisoning her children against her. Preparing them to be taken away. Enough. She'd been gathering evidence for a month. She had bank records, emails, recordings, witness statements, documentation of the forgeries, proof of the lies. Tomorrow, she was going to take the first step. She was going to call a lawyer. Not Thomas's family lawyer. Not anyone connected to Margaret's network. Someone independent. Someone who specialized in cases like this. Because Margaret thought she was the only one who knew how to play the long game. She thought Jasmine was too weak, too passive, too desperate for approval to fight back. Margaret was about to learn she'd been poisoning the wrong woman. There's a special kind of strength that comes from being underestimated your whole life. Margaret thought she knew Jasmine. Weak, compliant, desperate for approval, easy to manipulate. She had no idea who Jasmine was about to become. The lawyer's office was in a part of town Jasmine had never been to before. Deliberately chosen. Far from Thomas's work, far from Margaret's social circle, far from anyone who might recognize her car in the parking lot. The lawyer's name was Patricia Chen. She specialized in high-conflict divorce and custody cases. Her reviews online used words like fierce and relentless and doesn't back down. Jasmine needed fierce. She needed relentless. Patricia was in her 50s, sharp-eyed and direct. She listened to Jasmine's story without interrupting, taking notes with precise handwriting. When Jasmine finished, Patricia leaned back in her chair. "How much evidence do you have?" she asked. Jasmine opened her bag. She'd brought copies of everything. The bank statements with forged signatures. The emails between Margaret and Thomas discussing custody. The recordings of Margaret undermining her. Sarah's written statement about the pattern of behavior. Patricia went through it all methodically. When she finished, she looked at Jasmine with something like respect. "This is good," she said. "This is very good. But I need you to understand something. This is going to get ugly. Margaret isn't going to go down quietly, and neither is Thomas. They're going to escalate. They're going to try to paint you as vindictive, as the aggressor. You need to be prepared for that." "I've been preparing for a month," Jasmine said quietly. "What do I do next?" "You keep doing exactly what you've been doing," Patricia said. "You document everything. You stay calm. You don't confront them directly. And when we have everything we need, we strike fast and we strike hard. We file for divorce with a full accounting of the emotional abuse, the financial fraud, the parental alienation. We get a restraining order against Margaret. We go for full custody with supervised visitation only." Jasmine's hand shook slightly. This was real now. This was happening. "Can we win?" she asked. Patricia looked her directly in the eyes. "With what you've already gathered? Yes. But you need to keep gathering. The more evidence you have, the stronger our case. Can you do that?" "I can do that," Jasmine said. And she did. For the next 6 weeks, Jasmine lived a double life. On the surface, she was the same struggling wife and mother everyone expected to see. Tired. Stressed. A little scattered. Exactly what Margaret had been telling everyone she was. But underneath, she was building a case that would destroy Margaret's carefully constructed lies. Every Sunday dinner at Margaret's house became a covert operation. Jasmine wore the pen recorder on a chain around her neck, hidden under her blouse. She kept her phone in her pocket with a recording app running. She smiled through Margaret's insults and documented every single one. "Jasmine, darling, are you sure you should have that second helping? You've put on weight." Recorded. "Emma told me the most concerning thing yesterday. She said you locked yourself in the bathroom and cried for an hour. That must be so frightening for the children to witness." Recorded. "Thomas, maybe you should handle bedtime tonight. Jasmine seems overwhelmed." Recorded. Every cutting remark delivered with a smile. Every undermining comment disguised as concern. Every manipulation wrapped in false love. Jasmine recorded all of it. But the most damning evidence came from the moments when Margaret thought no one was listening. 3 weeks into Jasmine's surveillance, there was a family gathering at Margaret's house for Thomas's brother's birthday. Jasmine excused herself to use the bathroom upstairs. On her way back down, she heard voices in Margaret's home office. Margaret and Thomas's father, Richard, having a conversation they thought was private. Jasmine stood in the hallway, phone recording, barely breathing. "I don't know about this, Margaret," Richard was saying. His voice sounded troubled. "Taking the grandchildren from their mother, that seems extreme." "It's not extreme, it's necessary," Margaret said sharply. "That woman is not fit to raise our grandchildren. You see how she is. Unstable. Paranoid. It's only a matter of time before she does something that hurts those kids." "But Thomas says she's never actually hurt them." "Not yet," Margaret interrupted. "But do we wait until she does? Do we wait for the tragedy?" "I've been documenting everything for 2 years, Richard. The courts will see. Everyone will see. She's unfit, and we're protecting those children. What does Thomas really think about all this?" There was a pause. Then Margaret's voice, colder now. "Thomas thinks what I tell him to think. He's always been soft when it comes to women. He feels guilty. But he knows it's the right thing. He just needs to be guided." "You're manipulating your own son." "I'm protecting my family," Margaret snapped. From a woman who was never good enough for him in the first place. I tried, Richard. I tried to accept her. But some people just don't belong in families like ours. She's common. She's weak. And she's damaging our grandchildren with her instability. Margaret, you've been saying she's unstable for years, but I've never seen any real evidence. Because you're not paying attention. Margaret's voice rose. I see it. Thomas sees it. The whole family sees it. And soon, the courts will see it too. Those children will be better off without her, and Thomas will thank me eventually. He always does. Jasmine backed away from the door slowly, her heart pounding so hard she thought they might hear it. She made her way downstairs on shaking legs. She had it now. Margaret admitting, in her own words, that she was manipulating Thomas. That she'd been orchestrating this entire thing. That she'd decided years ago that Jasmine didn't belong in the family. Patricia Chen was going to love this recording. But Jasmine wasn't done. Because she'd realized something important. If Margaret had been planning this for 2 years, there had to be more. More documents. More evidence of the conspiracy. Margaret's home office. That's where it would be. The next week, Margaret invited the family over for Sunday brunch. Thomas, the kids, everyone. It was Emma's 10th birthday, and Margaret had insisted on hosting. Jasmine had been planning for this. She'd told Thomas she wasn't feeling well, that she might need to lie down during the party. He'd been annoyed but unsurprised. See? Unreliable. Just like his mother said. During the party, while everyone was outside watching the children play, Jasmine slipped away. She had 20 minutes, maybe 30 if she was lucky. Margaret's office was locked, but Jasmine had prepared for that too. She'd watched YouTube videos on picking simple locks. It took her 3 tries, her hands sweating, her ears straining for footsteps, but she got it open. Inside, she found exactly what she was looking for. A file cabinet with a folder labeled Thomas and Family. Inside that folder was a timeline. Years of dates and notes. Jasmine seemed emotional at Christmas dinner. Jasmine forgot to bring dessert to gathering, possible sign of mental decline. Children mentioned Jasmine raised her voice, documenting potential verbal abuse. Incident after incident, twisted and documented. Things that were completely normal, reframed as evidence of instability. But there was more. Letters from Margaret's lawyer friend Gerald, outlining the legal strategy for a custody case. Drafted documents for grandparents' rights petitions. Research on parental fitness evaluations. Margaret had been building a legal case as carefully as a prosecutor building a criminal trial. Jasmine photographed everything with her backup phone. Every page. Every note. Every piece of evidence that this was premeditated, systematic, malicious. Then she found the most chilling document of all. A handwritten note from Margaret to herself, dated 3 years ago. Jasmine will never be good enough. She doesn't understand that. But I will make everyone else understand. Slowly. Carefully. By the time I'm done, even Thomas will see that those children deserve better than her. Patience. Persistence. Document everything. When the time comes, no judge will be able to deny what's obvious to everyone else. 3 years. Margaret had been planning to take Jasmine's children for 3 years. Jasmine photographed the note with shaking hands. Then she carefully put everything back exactly as she'd found it, locked the office door, and returned to the party. Feeling better? Thomas asked when she came outside. Much better, Jasmine said, smiling at her children. Emma was laughing, covered in frosting from her birthday cake. Michael was running around with his cousins. Her children. Who Margaret thought she was going to take. Over my dead body, Jasmine thought. That night, she sent all the new evidence to Patricia Chen. The lawyer called her within an hour. This is it, Patricia said. This is everything we need. With these documents, the recordings, the bank fraud evidence. Jasmine, we can file next week. Are you ready? Jasmine thought about 15 years of swallowing insults. 15 years of trying to earn love from a woman who was incapable of giving it. 15 years of watching her husband choose his mother over her, again and again and again. She thought about Emma's scared little voice asking if mommy was sick. About Margaret's poisonous whispers to her grandchildren. About Thomas looking at her with suspicion in his eyes. I'm ready, Jasmine said. There's one more thing I need you to do, Patricia said. I need you to get one final recording. I need Margaret to fully admit what she's been doing. Can you do that? Jasmine's mind raced. How could she get Margaret to confess? The woman was too smart, too careful. Then she had an idea. A risky idea. But it might work. I can do it, Jasmine said. 2 days later, Jasmine called Margaret. Her voice was shaking, defeated. Not hard to fake, because part of her really did feel that way. Margaret, I need to talk to you. Alone. Can I come over? Margaret's voice was honey-sweet with victory. Of course, dear. I'm always here for you. When Jasmine arrived at Margaret's house, she looked exactly like what Margaret wanted to see. Broken. Exhausted. Defeated. Margaret made tea, all gracious hostess. They sat in the living room, and Jasmine let the silence stretch. I can't do this anymore, Jasmine said finally, her voice small. I know what everyone thinks of me. I know what you think of me. And maybe you're right. Margaret leaned forward, her eyes gleaming. What do you mean, dear? Maybe I'm not good enough for this family, Jasmine said. The recording device in her purse was running. Maybe I never was. Maybe the children would be better off without me. Now, Jasmine, that's not what I... Yes, it is, Jasmine interrupted, letting tears fall. Real tears, for everything this woman had stolen from her. It's exactly what you think. What you've always thought. What you've been telling everyone for years. Margaret's mask slipped, just for a second. A flash of triumph in her eyes. I've only ever wanted what's best for my grandchildren. By destroying me, Jasmine said flatly. By turning my own husband against me. By making everyone believe I'm crazy. You're being dramatic. Am I? Jasmine looked directly at her. You've been planning this for years, haven't you? The documentation. The lies. The forged bank withdrawals. All of it. Building a case to take my children. Margaret's face hardened. The sweet grandmother mask was gone, and what remained was cold and calculating. You were never good enough for my son. I knew it from the moment I met you. Common background. No social standing. No refinement. You trapped him with your neediness. So you decided to destroy me. I decided to protect my family, Margaret said, her voice like ice. My son. My grandchildren. From a woman who would only drag them down. You should have left gracefully years ago. But you clung on, desperate and pathetic, thinking you belonged in a family like ours. A family like yours, Jasmine repeated. Thomas will see it eventually. He's starting to already. And when he does, when he finally accepts what I've known all along, those children will have the life they deserve. Without you in it. Jasmine stood up slowly. Thank you, Margaret. For what? Margaret looked confused. For finally telling the truth, Jasmine said. She reached into her purse and pulled out the recorder, holding it up so Margaret could see the blinking red light. Every word. Crystal clear. Margaret's face went white, then red. She lunged for the recorder, but Jasmine stepped back. This is just a copy, Jasmine said calmly. I have backups. Multiple backups. Of this conversation and every other conversation we've had for the past 2 months. I have your emails with Thomas. Your timeline in your office. Your forged bank withdrawals. Your lawyer's letters. Your handwritten notes about taking my children. I have everything, Margaret. Margaret stared at her, and for the first time in 15 years, Jasmine saw something in those cold eyes. Fear. You can't use that, Margaret hissed. That's illegal. Recording someone without their consent. Actually, Jasmine said, in this state, only one party needs to consent to a recording. And I consent. My lawyer has everything. And tomorrow morning, I'm filing for divorce. With a full accounting of your emotional abuse, your financial fraud, and your systematic parental alienation. Thomas will never believe you. He doesn't have to believe me, Jasmine said. The judge will. See, that's the thing about poison, Margaret. It only works when people don't know it's poison. But when you expose it, when you show everyone exactly what it is, it loses all its power. She walked to the door, then turned back. Margaret stood frozen in her living room, her perfect world crumbling around her. You were right about one thing, Jasmine said quietly. I was never good enough for your family. But that's because your family is toxic. And I'm done trying to survive in a toxic environment. My children deserve better. They deserve a mother who fights for them. And that's exactly what I'm going to do. She left Margaret standing there and drove straight to Patricia Chen's office. I got it, she said, handing over the recorder. She confessed to everything. Patricia listened to the recording, a smile growing on her face. Oh, Jasmine. This is beautiful. This is absolutely beautiful. She destroyed herself. What happens now? Jasmine asked. Now? Patricia said. Now we go to war. And honey, we're going to win. You know what they say about cornered animals? They fight the hardest right before they lose. Margaret was about to learn that lesson the hard way. Patricia Chen filed the divorce papers on a Thursday morning. By Thursday afternoon, Thomas had been served at his office. By Thursday evening, Jasmine's phone was ringing off the hook. She didn't answer. Patricia had been clear. Let them panic. Let them scramble. Don't engage. Everything goes through me now. But she listened to the voicemails. Oh, she listened. Thomas's voice, confused and angry. Jasmine, what is this? Divorce? We need to talk about this. This is insane. Call me back. Then angrier. You can't just take the kids and leave. That's kidnapping. My lawyer says you have to bring them back. Call me. Now. Then Margaret's voice, no longer sweet, no longer controlled. Pure venom. You ungrateful little witch. After everything this family has done for you. You'll regret this. You'll lose everything. Those children will never forgive you for tearing this family apart. Jasmine saved every voicemail. More evidence. The divorce filing wasn't just a simple dissolution of marriage. Patricia had included everything. A detailed account of Margaret's 15-year campaign of emotional abuse. The forged bank withdrawals with evidence of fraud. The emails between Thomas and Margaret discussing custody. The recordings of parental alienation. The timeline from Margaret's office showing premeditation. And she'd filed for an emergency restraining order against Margaret, citing evidence of ongoing attempts to alienate the children from their mother and credible threats to Jasmine's custody. The hearing for the restraining order was set for Monday. 4 days away. 4 days for Margaret to realize her perfect world was burning down around her. That Friday, Jasmine did something she'd been planning for weeks. She sent an email to Thomas's entire extended family. Not the fake social media account this time. Her real account. Her real voice. The subject line was simple, the truth about the last 15 years. She didn't attack. She didn't accuse. She simply laid out facts. With attachments. Lots of attachments. For 15 years, I have tried to be the daughter-in-law Margaret wanted me to be. I have swallowed insults, accepted blame, and allowed myself to be diminished in ways I'm only now beginning to understand. I thought if I just tried hard enough, loved enough, sacrificed enough, I would finally be accepted. I was wrong. What I didn't know was that Margaret had decided on my wedding day that I would never be good enough, and she spent 15 years systematically destroying my reputation, my marriage, and my relationship with my own children to prove herself right. I'm not asking you to take my word for it. I'm asking you to look at the evidence. The emails. The recordings. The forged documents. The timeline she kept in her office documenting her plans to take my children. Some of you participated in this, knowingly or unknowingly. Some of you spread rumors you were told. Some of you excluded me based on lies you believed. I don't blame you. Margaret is very convincing. That's what makes her so dangerous. But now you know the truth. What you do with that truth is up to you. I'm not the enemy Margaret painted me to be. I'm just a mother protecting her children. And I won't apologize for that anymore. She attached selected recordings. The one where Margaret admitted to manipulating Thomas. The one where she told Patricia that Jasmine was never good enough. The one where she told the children their mother was sick in the head. She attached photos of the forged bank withdrawals next to her real signature. She attached Margaret's handwritten note about her 3-year plan. And then she hit send. Within an hour, her phone started ringing again. But this time, the voices were different. Thomas's sister Rachel, crying. Jasmine, I'm so sorry. I believed her. We all believed her. Oh my God, what she's been doing to you. Thomas's father Richard, his voice heavy with shame. I suspected something wasn't right. I should have looked harder. I should have protected you. I'm so sorry. Even some of Margaret's friends from church. We had no idea. She told us you were having a breakdown. We thought we were being supportive by believing her. We were wrong. Not everyone, of course. Some people were too invested in Margaret's version of reality to accept the truth. But enough people. Enough that Margaret's perfect reputation was cracking. And Thomas? Thomas didn't call. The weekend was a blur of preparation. Patricia worked around the clock, building their case for Monday's hearing. Jasmine stayed with her parents, who had driven 6 hours the moment they heard what was happening. Her mother held her while she cried. Her father promised that those children would never be taken from her. Monday morning arrived cold and clear. The courthouse was intimidating, all marble and echoing footsteps. Jasmine wore a simple navy dress, minimal makeup, her hair pulled back. Patricia had coached her. Look like the stable, responsible parent you are. Let Margaret be the one who looks unhinged. Margaret arrived with 3 lawyers. 3. She was taking no chances. Thomas was with her, his face pale and set. He wouldn't meet Jasmine's eyes. Richard was there too, but he sat on Jasmine's side of the courtroom. So did Rachel and her husband. The family was fracturing in real time. Judge Morrison was a woman in her 60s with sharp eyes that missed nothing. She'd read the filings. All of them. Jasmine could tell by the way she looked at Margaret, clinical and assessing. This is a hearing for a temporary restraining order, Judge Morrison began. Ms. Chen, present your case. Patricia stood, and she was magnificent. She laid out 15 years of abuse in clear, factual terms. She played selected recordings, the ones where Margaret's mask slipped completely. The courtroom listened in silence as Margaret's voice filled the space, cold and calculating and cruel. You trapped him with your neediness. She was never good enough for my son. Thomas thinks what I tell him to think. Those children will be better off without her. When the recording of Margaret telling Emma that mommy was sick in the head played, Jasmine saw Thomas flinch. Saw his face crumble. He was finally hearing it. Really hearing it. Patricia presented the forged bank withdrawals. The handwriting expert's report confirming the signatures were not Jasmine's. The emails between Margaret and her lawyer discussing the custody strategy. The timeline showing years of premeditation. Your Honor, Patricia said, this is not a family dispute. This is a systematic campaign of abuse, fraud, and parental alienation orchestrated by a woman who decided 15 years ago that my client didn't deserve to be part of her family. The evidence is overwhelming. Ms. Margaret Hayes is a danger to my client's children, not because of anything physical, but because she is actively working to destroy their relationship with their mother. Margaret's lead attorney, a sharp-faced man named Donovan, stood to respond. Your Honor, these recordings were obtained without consent. They're inadmissible. And Ms. Williams's interpretation of normal family interactions as abuse is a gross exaggeration driven by her own mental instability. I'll determine what's admissible, Mr. Donovan, Judge Morrison said coolly. And I've reviewed the consent laws in this state. Single-party consent recordings are perfectly legal. Continue. Donovan tried. He painted Jasmine as vindictive, as a woman scorned who was twisting innocent comments into evidence of conspiracy. He suggested she was mentally unstable, that her paranoia was the real danger to the children. But every argument he made, Patricia had evidence to counter. Jasmine's clean mental health records. The testimony of her children's teachers praising her involvement. The pediatrician's statement that the children were healthy, well-adjusted, and showed no signs of living in an unstable home. Then Patricia called Richard Hayes to the stand. Thomas's own father. Mr. Hayes, you were married to Margaret Hayes for 38 years. In your experience, is she capable of the behavior described in these recordings? Richard looked at Margaret, and something like grief passed across his face. Yes. I've watched her manipulate our sons their entire lives. Control them. Make them dependent on her approval. I thought it was just her way of loving them. But listening to those recordings, hearing her talk about my daughter-in-law that way, I can't deny it anymore. Margaret doesn't love. She controls. And she destroys anyone who threatens that control. Margaret's face went white with rage. How dare you, she hissed, loud enough for the whole courtroom to hear. After everything I've done for this family. Mrs. Hayes, Judge Morrison said sharply. You will remain silent or I will have you removed from this courtroom. Margaret's lawyers looked like they wanted to disappear. Their client was imploding in front of the judge. Patricia called one more witness. Sarah Mitchell. Thomas's ex-girlfriend from 20 years ago. Sarah took the stand and told her story. How Margaret had done the exact same thing to her. The subtle insults. The undermining. The campaign to convince Thomas that Sarah wasn't good enough. The ultimatum that ended their relationship. I see the same pattern in what happened to Jasmine, Sarah said quietly. Margaret doesn't want her sons to have partners. She wants them to have dependents. Women she can control. And when she can't control them, she destroys them. When Sarah stepped down, Judge Morrison took a long moment to review her notes. The courtroom was silent except for the sound of Margaret's angry breathing. Finally, the judge spoke. I've seen a lot of ugly custody disputes in my years on the bench. But this is something different. Mrs. Hayes, the evidence against you is damning. Your own words convict you. You have engaged in a calculated, long-term campaign of emotional abuse and parental alienation. You have committed fraud by forging your daughter-in-law's signature on bank documents. You have manipulated your own son and turned him against his wife. Your Honor, I was only trying to protect my grandchildren from a woman who is clearly unfit. Margaret started. You were trying to steal those grandchildren, Judge Morrison said, her voice cutting. And you nearly succeeded. But the law protects children from this kind of manipulation, even when it comes from family members who claim to love them. She looked directly at Margaret. The temporary restraining order is granted. Mrs. Margaret Hayes, you are prohibited from any contact with the minor children Emma and Michael Williams. You are prohibited from any contact with Jasmine Williams. You are prohibited from coming within 500 feet of their residence, their schools, or any location where they may be present. This order will remain in effect pending the final divorce hearing. Margaret stood up, shaking with rage. You can't do this. Those are my grandchildren. I have rights. You have the right to remain silent before I hold you in contempt, Judge Morrison said. Sit down, Mrs. Hayes. Margaret's lawyers pulled her back into her seat, but her eyes were fixed on Jasmine with pure hatred. Judge Morrison turned to Thomas, who had sat frozen throughout the entire hearing. Mr. Williams, I'm ordering a custody evaluation. In the meantime, the children will remain in their mother's primary custody. You will have supervised visitation twice a week until the evaluation is complete. I'm also ordering family counseling for you and individual therapy to address the enmeshment issues with your mother that have been documented here today. Thomas nodded numbly. He still hadn't looked at Jasmine. This court is adjourned. As people filed out of the courtroom, Rachel came up to Jasmine and hugged her tightly. I'm so sorry. For everything. For believing her. For not seeing what she was doing to you. You see it now, Jasmine said. That's what matters. Richard approached next, his eyes wet. I failed you. I saw what she was and I did nothing. I'm ashamed. You're here now, Jasmine said. You testified against her. That took courage. Thomas stood across the hallway with his mother, who was hissing furiously at her lawyers. He looked over at Jasmine once, and the expression on his face was complicated. Guilt. Confusion. Grief. The realization of what he'd lost hitting him all at once. Jasmine looked back at him steadily. She felt no satisfaction in his pain. No vindication. Just the cold recognition that this was the man who had chosen his mother over her for 15 years. The man who had let her be destroyed because it was easier than standing up to his mother. She turned away. She had nothing to say to him. Outside the courthouse, Patricia pulled Jasmine aside. That went better than I could have hoped. Morrison took it seriously. The restraining order sends a message. But you need to prepare yourself. The divorce proceedings are going to be brutal. Margaret isn't going to accept this quietly. I know, Jasmine said. But I'm not backing down. Not anymore. Good, Patricia said, a fierce smile on her face. Because we're just getting started. We're going after her for fraud. We're going after Thomas for enabling the abuse. And when we're done, you're going to have full custody, a substantial financial settlement, and the freedom to raise your children without that woman's poison anywhere near them. Jasmine took a deep breath of cold air. For the first time in 15 years, it felt clean, pure. Like she could finally breathe without the weight of Margaret's judgment pressing down on her chest. She'd spent 15 years being crushed under someone else's cruelty. Now she was watching that cruelty crumble into dust. And it felt like freedom. You want to know the strangest thing about freedom? At first, it feels almost like fear. Because when you've lived in a cage for so long, even after the door opens, you still remember what the bars felt like. The divorce proceedings took 6 months. 6 months of depositions, hearings, evaluations, and negotiations. 6 months of Thomas's lawyers trying to paint Jasmine as vindictive and unstable. 6 months of Margaret hovering at the edges, unable to contact anyone directly because of the restraining order, but still trying to control the narrative through proxies. But this time, the truth was too loud to silence. The custody evaluator was a woman named Dr. Linda Hartmann. She spent hours with Jasmine, with Thomas, with the children. She reviewed all the evidence. The recordings. The timeline. The pattern of behavior spanning 15 years. Her report was 43 pages long. Jasmine read it 3 times, tears streaming down her face. Emma Williams, age 10, presents as a well-adjusted child with appropriate attachment to her mother. When asked about her grandmother Margaret, Emma's effect changed noticeably. She became guarded and expressed confusion about whether she was allowed to love her mother. Quote, Grandma says Mommy is sick sometimes, but Mommy doesn't seem sick to me. I don't know who to believe. This is consistent with ongoing parental alienation. Michael Williams, age 7, shows secure attachment to his mother and age-appropriate emotional regulation. He expressed that he misses his grandmother but became visibly anxious when discussing visits to her house. Quote, Grandma tells me secrets about Mommy. But the secrets make me feel bad in my tummy. In 20 years of conducting custody evaluations, I have rarely seen such clear evidence of systematic parental alienation and emotional manipulation by a third party. Margaret Hayes represents a significant psychological threat to these children's well-being and their relationship with their primary caregiver. I recommend that Ms. Hayes have no unsupervised contact with the minor children, and that any supervised contact be contingent upon her completion of a parental alienation intervention program and individual therapy. Regarding the parents, Jasmine Williams presents as a stable, nurturing, and protective mother who has survived years of psychological abuse. Thomas Williams presents as a conflicted individual who has been manipulated by his mother to the detriment of his marriage and his children. With intensive therapy, Mr. Williams may be able to rebuild a healthy relationship with his children, but this will require him to establish firm boundaries with his mother, which he has thus far been unable to do. Patricia called Jasmine the day the report came through. "This is a home run. Hartman didn't pull any punches. With this report, we can push for exactly what we want." What they wanted was full legal and physical custody for Jasmine, supervised visitation for Thomas twice a week until he completed therapy and could demonstrate healthy boundaries with his mother. No contact whatsoever between Margaret and the children unless and until she completed court-mandated therapy, which could take years. And a financial settlement that reflected 15 years of emotional abuse and fraud. Thomas's lawyers knew they were beaten. They came to the table ready to negotiate. The final settlement was more than Jasmine had dared to hope for. Full custody of Emma and Michael, with Thomas having visitation rights that would increase gradually as he progressed in therapy. He would pay substantial child support and alimony. He would cover all therapy costs for the children and himself. The house, which had been in both their names, went to Jasmine. Thomas took the larger share of debt in exchange. And Margaret? The restraining order was made permanent. She was prohibited from any contact with Emma and Michael until they turned 18, unless both children requested contact and a family therapist approved it. She was also ordered to pay restitution for the forged bank withdrawals. $63,000, plus interest and legal fees. The criminal charges for fraud were still pending. Patricia had made sure of that. On the day the divorce was finalized, Jasmine sat in the courtroom and watched the judge sign the papers. Thomas sat across the aisle, looking like he'd aged 10 years and 6 months. His mother wasn't there. She wasn't allowed to be. "The marriage of Thomas Williams and Jasmine Williams is hereby dissolved," Judge Morrison said. She looked at Jasmine with something like approval. "Ms. Williams, I want to commend you for your courage in bringing this situation to light. You protected your children from a toxic situation, and that takes tremendous strength. I wish you and your children all the best." Outside the courthouse, Jasmine's parents were waiting. Her mother hugged her tight. "It's over, baby. It's finally over." "It's over," Jasmine repeated, and suddenly she was crying. Not tears of sadness. Tears of relief. Of release. Of 15 years of poison finally draining from her system. The first few months after the divorce were strange. Jasmine kept expecting Margaret to appear. Kept waiting for the other shoe to drop. Kept looking over her shoulder for the next attack. But it didn't come. The restraining order held. Margaret's power was broken. Slowly, carefully, life began to reshape itself into something new. Emma started therapy with a wonderful counselor named Miss Jennifer, who specialized in helping children process family trauma. At first, Emma was quiet, guarded. But over time, she opened up. "I don't have to choose anymore," Emma told Jasmine one night at bedtime. "Miss Jennifer says I can love Daddy and still know that what Grandma did was wrong. I don't have to pick sides." "You never had to pick sides, sweetheart," Jasmine said, smoothing her daughter's hair. "You were always allowed to love everyone. But Grandma said." "I know what Grandma said. But Grandma was wrong. And you don't have to carry her words anymore." Emma looked up at her mother with those serious dark eyes. "Are you okay now, Mommy? Really okay?" Jasmine thought about that question. Was she okay? The nightmares had lessened. The constant anxiety had faded. She could breathe without that tight feeling in her chest. She could make decisions without hearing Margaret's critical voice in her head. "I'm getting there," she said honestly. "Some days are harder than others. But yes, sweetheart. I'm okay. We're all going to be okay." Michael, being younger, bounced back faster. But even he had moments. "Why can't we see Grandma anymore?" he asked one day. Jasmine had prepared for this question with her own therapist. "Because Grandma was saying things that weren't true and it was hurting our family. Sometimes, even people we love can do things that aren't healthy for us." And when that happens, we have to protect ourselves, even if it's hard. Will we ever see her again? Maybe when you're older, Jasmine said. When you're old enough to understand everything that happened and make your own choice about whether you want to. But right now, Mommy's job is to keep you safe and happy. And that means no grandma for a while. Michael thought about this, then nodded. Okay. Can I have a snack? Children are resilient, the therapist had told her. They heal faster than adults. Give them stability, honesty, and love, and they'll be fine. Jasmine gave them all 3. Thomas's visitations were awkward at first. He would pick up the kids, barely meeting Jasmine's eyes, and bring them back 2 hours later. The supervised visits were at a family center with a monitor present, because he hadn't yet proven he could maintain boundaries with his mother. But slowly, very slowly, something shifted. 4 months after the divorce, Thomas asked to speak with Jasmine. Not through lawyers. Just the 2 of them. Patricia advised against it, but Jasmine agreed. They met at a coffee shop, neutral territory. Thomas looked terrible. Thinner. Older. Haunted. I owe you an apology, he said without preamble. A real one. Not because my lawyer told me to. Because I need you to know that I understand what I did. What I let happen. Jasmine waited. She'd learned the power of silence. I've been in therapy 3 times a week, Thomas continued. Dr. Richards, he's made me see things I didn't want to see. About my mother. About myself. About what I did to you. His voice cracked. Jasmine, I let her destroy you. For 15 years, I chose her over you. I let her poison our marriage, our children, our entire life. And I told myself I was keeping the peace. I told myself you were being too sensitive. I told myself she meant well. She didn't mean well, Jasmine said quietly. No. She didn't. She's incapable of meaning well when it comes to anyone who threatens her control. Thomas looked down at his coffee cup. Dr. Richards says I was enmeshed with her. That she trained me from childhood to believe that loving her meant doing what she wanted. That disagreeing with her was betrayal. I didn't know how to stand up to her because I'd never been allowed to. That doesn't excuse what you did to me. No. It doesn't. Nothing excuses it. Thomas looked up, and his eyes were wet. I destroyed our marriage. I lost my family. I almost lost my children. All because I was too weak to stand up to my mother. And I have to live with that for the rest of my life. Jasmine felt a flicker of something. Not forgiveness. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But understanding. Are you in contact with her now? No. That was the hardest thing Dr. Richards asked me to do. Cut contact completely until I could establish healthy boundaries. I haven't spoken to her in 3 months. She calls constantly. Leaves voicemails screaming about betrayal, about how I'm abandoning her, about how this is all your fault. He laughed bitterly. Even now, she can't accept responsibility. Can't admit what she did. She never will, Jasmine said. People like Margaret don't change. They just find new targets. My father left her, Thomas said. Did you know that? He filed for divorce 2 months ago. Said he'd wasted enough of his life enabling her cruelty. Rachel and David won't let her see their kids anymore either. She's alone. And she still thinks she's the victim. Jasmine felt nothing at this news. No satisfaction. No pity. Just the cold acknowledgement that Margaret had reaped what she'd sown. I don't expect you to forgive me, Thomas said. I don't deserve it. But I want you to know that I'm working on being better. For Emma and Michael. I want to be the father they deserve. The father I should have been all along. Then prove it, Jasmine said. Not with words. With actions. Be present for them. Protect them. Choose them over everyone else, including your mother. Every single time. I will, Thomas said. I swear to you, I will. Jasmine stood to leave, then paused. Thomas, I spent 15 years of my life trying to earn love from a woman who was incapable of giving it. Trying to earn respect from a man who had given all his loyalty to someone else. I'm not that person anymore. I don't need your apology to move on. I've already moved on. But if you want a relationship with your children, you need to prove you've changed. Not to me. To them. She left him sitting there and walked out into the sunshine. 6 months after the divorce, Jasmine did something she hadn't done in 15 years. She went out with friends. Real friends. Women she'd lost touch with over the years because Margaret had made her feel guilty about spending time away from family obligations. They met at a wine bar downtown. 3 women from Jasmine's college days who had welcomed her back with open arms when she'd reached out. Look at you, her friend Maya said, raising a glass. You're glowing. Seriously glowing. I'm free, Jasmine said, and the truth of it made her laugh. For the first time in 15 years, I'm actually free. Tell us everything, her friend Sophia demanded. We want all the details of how you took down the Wicked Witch. So Jasmine told them the whole story. And as she talked, she realized something. She wasn't ashamed anymore. She wasn't embarrassed about what had happened to her. Because she'd survived it. She'd fought back. She'd won. You're a warrior, Maya said when the story was done. Seriously. What you did, gathering all that evidence while still playing the role she expected, that's incredible. I had to protect my kids, Jasmine said simply. Margaret was never going to stop. The only way to beat her was to expose her completely. To take away her power. And you did, Sophia said. You took that power and you broke it into pieces. They talked late into the night. About life, about dreams, about all the things Jasmine had put on hold while she was drowning in Margaret's toxicity. And for the first time in years, Jasmine let herself imagine a future. Not as someone's wife. Not as someone's victim. Just as herself. A year after the divorce, Emma came to Jasmine with a question. Daddy asked if we wanted to meet his new girlfriend. Is that okay? Jasmine felt a pang, just for a moment. Not jealousy. Just the ghost of what might have been if Thomas had chosen differently all those years ago. What do you think? She asked Emma. Do you want to meet her? I think so. Daddy says she's really nice. And he says Grandma doesn't like her, which Miss Jennifer says is probably a good sign. Jasmine laughed despite herself. Miss Jennifer is right. What's her name? Caroline. She's a teacher. Daddy says she doesn't let Grandma boss her around. Good for Caroline, Jasmine thought. Then yes, sweetheart. If you want to meet her, that's fine with me. Your dad is allowed to move on with his life. We all are. That night, alone in her quiet house, Jasmine poured herself a glass of wine and sat on the back porch. The same porch where she used to sit and cry after brutal Sunday dinners at Margaret's house. The same porch where she'd planned her escape. But it didn't feel the same anymore. It felt peaceful, clean, hers. Her phone buzzed. A text from Patricia. Thought you'd want to know. Margaret's fraud case went to trial today. She was found guilty on all counts. Sentenced to 2 years probation, community service, and full restitution. Her lawyer says she blamed you the entire time. Of course she did, Jasmine thought. Margaret would go to her grave believing she was the victim. That was the nature of people like her. They could never see their own poison. But that wasn't Jasmine's problem anymore. She texted back. Thanks for letting me know. I'm at peace with it either way. And she was. Because the real victory wasn't Margaret's conviction or the restraining order or the custody agreement. The real victory was the life Jasmine had built after escaping. The peace she'd found. The relationship she'd rebuilt with her children. The person she'd become when she finally stopped trying to earn love from people who were incapable of giving it. 2 years after the divorce, Emma turned 12. She asked for a small party with just her closest friends. No big family gathering. No drama. Just cake and laughter and music in their backyard. Jasmine watched her daughter surrounded by friends, genuinely happy, no longer carrying the weight of divided loyalties or toxic secrets. Michael ran around with the other kids, all energy and joy, completely himself. Thomas came by to drop off a gift. He'd completed his therapy program and his visitation was no longer supervised. He'd maintained his boundaries with Margaret, who still called him a traitor. He was still dating Caroline, who Emma and Michael genuinely liked. They look happy, Thomas said, watching the kids play. They are, Jasmine said. So do you, he said quietly. Happy? I'm glad. You deserve it. Jasmine looked at this man she'd once loved enough to marry. This man who had betrayed her through weakness rather than malice. This man who was trying, finally, to be better. We all deserve it, she said. Even you, Thomas. Even Margaret, though she'll never find it because she doesn't understand what happiness actually is. After Thomas left, Rachel came by with her family. She'd become one of Jasmine's strongest supporters, and the two women had built a real friendship from the ashes of family obligation. How does it feel? Rachel asked. 2 years out. Free of all that toxicity. Jasmine thought about it. Really thought about it. You know what the strangest thing is? I don't think about her anymore. Margaret used to live in my head rent-free, this constant voice of criticism and judgment. But somewhere along the way, without me even noticing, she moved out. I evicted her. And now there's just space. Clean, quiet space where I can hear my own voice. That's the real revenge, Rachel said wisely. Not the court cases or the convictions. just living well. Being happy. Showing your kids what healthy looks like. That night, after everyone had gone home and the kids were in bed, Jasmine stood in her living room and looked around. At the home she'd made. The life she'd built. The future she'd claimed for herself and her children. She thought about that young woman at the wedding, hearing Margaret whisper, "My son could have done so much better," and choosing to believe it could be overcome with enough love and effort. If she could go back and tell that young woman anything, what would she say? Run? No. Because then she wouldn't have Emma and Michael. Fight earlier? Maybe. But she hadn't been ready. Hadn't been strong enough. No. If she could tell that young woman anything, it would be this. You are enough. Exactly as you are. And anyone who spends years trying to convince you otherwise is showing you who they are, not who you are. Believe them the first time. Set boundaries the first time. Protect yourself the first time. Because poison doesn't get less toxic the longer you're exposed to it. It just seeps deeper. But here's the truth, the real truth that Jasmine had learned through fire and pain and the slow rebuilding of her life. Even after years of poison, you can heal. You can recover. You can become whole again. It takes courage. It takes evidence. It takes the willingness to be called crazy, vindictive, difficult, ungrateful. It takes everything you have. But on the other side of that fight, freedom, peace, the ability to look at yourself in the mirror and see someone strong instead of someone broken. Margaret had spent 15 years trying to destroy her. And she'd almost succeeded. But almost isn't the same as actually. And in the end, the poison lost its power. Because Jasmine had found something stronger. She'd found herself, her voice, her worth, her absolute unwillingness to let anyone take her children or her dignity ever again. That's the lesson. That's the truth that Jasmine would want you to know, wherever you are, whatever toxic situation you might be surviving. You are not crazy. You are not too sensitive. You are not imagining it. And you are strong enough to fight back, to document, to expose, to protect yourself and the people you love. The poison only wins if you let it. If you swallow it silently. If you believe the lies about who you are. But once you see it clearly, once you name it for what it is, once you refuse to drink it anymore, the poison loses its power. And you get your life back. Jasmine stood in her peaceful home, her children safe and sleeping upstairs, her future bright and unwritten, and she smiled. She'd walked through fire. And she'd come out the other side made of something unbreakable. Thank you for walking this difficult road with me to the very end. If this story resonated with you, you can support our community by sending a super thanks. It helps me continue to bring these important stories to light. On the screen now are 2 more stories that I know will touch your soul. I'll see you in the next one. Stay strong.